Yes, as far as I'm concerned, commercial photography is probably the best career in the world, but it might not be for everybody. In our last video, Al and I talked about all the things we love about commercial photography, and in this one, we discussed some of the things we're not too keen on. So if you're considering a career in commercial photography, you're probably going to want to watch both the last video and this one. Here you go.
All right. Today we're going to talk about the downside of commercial photography. We were here yesterday and talking about the upside of commercial photography. So we've compounded a list of things, and we're going to discuss that now. So what did you come up with?
Well, I love commercial photography, and it fits my personality to a T, but thinking about it, there's some definite downsides.
Yeah.
So I have a little list here.
Okay.
And one big one is the high rate of business failure. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to do this. I mean, it's like playing for a living.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of people that try it, and the market maybe isn't as strong as, you know, some people think it is, or maybe they find out that they don't have the talent needed, or maybe they find out that, you know, they're just not cut out for it, whatever.
Sure.
So that's one of the big downsides.
What do you think? I mean, you touched on what you think causes it, but go deeper on it.
Well, like I said, you have to have the right personality for it. I mean, I don't think. I mean, it might be the technical talent that they don't have,
Right.
or more times than not, they realize that there's more to it. I mean, it's just not taking pictures. I mean, there are some really good photographers that are crappy business people that end up failing.
Sure.
And I think that's a really big part of it. I mean, that brings us to the second point here is you really have to wear a lot of hats, and you have to be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
I really think one of the main reasons I have been as successful as I have been is because I've always had an interest in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love to do CEO. I thought I was just compelled to get into it and learn everything I could about it. You know, another YouTube thing where, you know, you go in and, you know, it's just, I know it's going to benefit the business. I mean, I made my own web pages. So if you have that desire to do the business end, I mean, I don't do any accounting or bookkeeping. I'm crappy at that.
Sure.
But I'm also very lucky because my wife loves to do that stuff.
We're giving Angela a shout out.
Yeah, because, you know, it's like as long as that Mac card works, I'm a happy man.
Sure.
And
Sure.
That's
I get
it.
that. You know, so if somebody is very artistic but not business minded, we'll say, you know, I'm still staying on that first point. In your opinion, what would you recommend them do if they say, "Hey, this is my weak spot"? You know, you happen to be lucky enough to have somebody to walk with you and help you. But if somebody doesn't have that, what should they do? I mean, just study on YouTube, or, you know, go to school.
I don't know if I know the answer to that. I think that they should probably not be a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Okay, if you're good enough to be the elite 2% or whatever, you can hire business people
There
to
you
help
go.
you.
There you go.
But if you're starting in business and you're like me or you, where
Right.
we're good, but we're not like, you know, that 1%, you know, and we can't afford a business partner.
Right.
And then maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of tough. Business is tough, and it, you know, you need a lot of talents. Like I said, you know, you have to, you know, on Facebook, I make a joke, you know, it says, you know, there's the bio, and I'm the owner/janitor at Michael Ray Photography,
Sure.
because you have
I've
to
seen
do
you mop
everything.
the floors.
Oh, yeah, many a times.
Right.
I mean, I clean the toilets. I
you take
do
the garbage
everything.
out,
I go
right.
run for lunch.
Right.
But yeah, and I guess I have photographer friends. Like I mentioned Floyd, my buddy
Yeah.
in Wilmington, Delaware. He has a studio, always had. And well, one of the things I like about it is I've never had to have an employee.
Right.
He's always had employees. I mean, he has a retoucher on staff. He has a salesman.
Okay.
So, I mean, you know, maybe your accountant person is also a salesperson. Now, that could be a nice match.
Sure.
That could be a nice match.
Well, and again, you know, you mentioned about wearing many hats. If you can wear less hats, if you choose to go that route where you have people working for you, then you don't have to wear as many hats. You can stay in your creative mind. I mean, that can be a little bit of a distraction when you have to wear all these hats. I mean, it happens, you know, and like for me, like billing's like the thing I hate to do the most. Like I just, it's very important, but it sometimes it drives me crazy, or like, you know, I'll let too much time go between the shoot and you can't remember. You probably screwed yourself.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. And so, you know, I'm trying to even have a mindset of billing immediately. You know, like, I mean, anywhere else, I you know, it's like, well, I'm jumping around, but in this business, like the stuff we do, a lot of times, you know, we do the job, we bill. It takes how many days to get paid?
90.
Yeah. And, you know, like I remember Jeff, our friend Jeff, was saying, you know, anywhere else you go, like you buy a pizza, you don't tell them I'll pay you 90 days. You know, that's a whole thing you have to get used to, which then becomes like almost a lifestyle. And I always say to Nikki, like, what I do today is based on what I've done and what I'm going to do. That tells me where I'm at.
Sounds like a presidential candidate.
Exactly. I shouldn't write. No, but I mean, like you get used to living in that tunnel of what you've done and what you're going to do and what you can do today based on all of that.
Yeah, I just look at it as sort of a pipe. You just got to keep shoving income into that up pipe and know you're not going to get that pipe until 90 days.
Right. But if you're consistent in work, then it really doesn't matter, you know. But when you hit slow times, you know, like, and that's we can talk about calendars and all that sort of mentality and mind screw that you can go through.
Yeah. That's one of the other things I actually mentioned was my list here was it's the inconsistent income that it'll drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not only the income that will drive you crazy, it's the inconsistent work.
Yeah.
I mean, the money is one thing, but not having a job lined up for next week sometimes is really stressful. To me, it is.
Sure. Well, yeah, and it can mess with your mood. I mean, you can get into a whole psychology of all of this, which maybe that is a video in itself. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, when things are good, they're good. You know, when you have work out there, and well, I can go camping this weekend, or I can,
right.
You know, I mean, and if you're away too long, you feel guilty, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, if I don't want to work every day. I mean, I don't.
Sure.
That's one of the great things about this job is you don't have to work every day because you charge enough per day that you just don't have to work 5 days a week.
Yeah.
If I can work 2.5, 3 days, I'm a happy man. So if I have 2.5, 3 days next week and another 2.5, 3 days like next week after that, then my mood is different.
Absolutely.
I'm relaxed. It's like, yeah, everything is good. But like if I look at next week and I don't have any jobs, which happens occasionally, and it's like, holy, I mean, it just brings you down, you know?
It does, you know, and then you kind of forget to remind yourself, like, okay, it's worked out in the past. You know?
Right. You think to yourself, was that the last job I'll ever do?
Sure.
I mean, that's a joke that like Jeff and I have made several times.
And it can be true.
Someday it will be true.
Sure.
You know,
sure. I go through that, and then there's slow periods. Like right now, we're getting close to Christmas, and you know that everything winds down into the year. It just in the commercial world, it seems to do that. But every year, it like freaks me out, and I tell myself like, you know better, but yet I still get that uneasy feeling. But I mean, and that's part of doing business and for yourself. And you know, there are some people like, I mean, you've done this forever. I've been in it a long time. It's like, I don't even know what it's like to work for somebody else now.
I couldn't do it. I
Right.
don't think I could do it.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a whole different thing. And I would be a fish out of water, you know, but like my dad will say to me, like, man, you know, like he'll understand, like, cause I'll tell him, but like my dad went to a place And then he sees me kind of crazy all the time, running all over. But like, I love that. I mean, it's all I know to do, and I really wouldn't want to change that.
No, and I mean, I question whether I would be as motivated, as devoted to working for somebody as I am for myself.
Yeah.
It's like, I realize that like my reputation's on the line, my income's on the line, my career's on the line. So I'll stay up late. I'll work weekends. I'll do whatever it needs to be done to do it.
Right. And I think that is being self-employed. Like, you don't shut down.
Yeah. And I don't think too many employees feel that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't think they're motivated like that.
Well, no, they leave at 5:00 and they forget about it. And to be honest with you,
That's a real upside.
sometimes I envy that.
Yeah. I think it's a personality mesh.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Like you just said, I don't know if I could do that. I don't, because I'm so used to doing the other way. I just don't know if I could be that person.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. So that's inconsistent income. And then, like I saw on your list, you have the long hours thing. And it's funny because we talked about zone yesterday, and they are long hours. I mean, an average production day when you work with an agency or whatever, it's about 10 hours,
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm learning getting into the film industry. Mm-hmm. Like it's the norm, 10 hours, 10-hour day.
Right.
Okay. But when you're self-employed as a photographer, I mean, you kind of, I tell the clients 8 hours, but I'm there early, I'm there late.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Just because, that's the way it works. But
Right.
it's long hours, So you're either off or you're prepping or you're working or you're marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And, but when you say production days, they are long days, but when you're in the zone, it flies.
Oh, they go fast.
It goes fast, And, in the long days thing, I was thinking about assistants, and a lot of assistants will, I shouldn't say a lot. There are some assistants that I've had, and they're there like half a day, and they're already thinking about when's it over, or,
Oh yeah.
And like, I think, man, if that's how you feel about this, you probably shouldn't do it.
Right. But that might be the, employer-employee kind of thing. Like when you're self-employed,
Right.
maybe when they get to that point, they'll be more dedicated.
That's a good point. Yeah.
They'll be in the zone and it'll be flowing and they won't
Yeah.
be off their phone.
Yeah. Or, hey, assistants, when you show up to a job, don't bring your Starbucks.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if it's like time to carry the cases down to the car and you're trying to like hold a coffee in one.
It doesn't work.
I've seen it tried many, many times.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. And that always bothers me.
me too.
Yeah.
I want them to be as dedicated as I am, but
Yeah. Sometimes you're dragging them along, but
most of the time.
yeah. I mean, I'll give that. I mean, I'm getting off subject a little bit, but I'll give that a few goes until they get used to things. But if it doesn't change, I'm usually done.
Yeah, I don't know. I one of my personality quirks is I don't like to have I don't like to approach people and have a conflict.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I won't say, "Could you put your phone down?" I'll just be quiet. And
Yeah.
it eats me up inside.
Yeah.
Until I say,
Yeah.
like I just won't call them back. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
That I vote with my feet kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other subject. When we talk about these things, in my head, I'm like, wow, that's a
I know.
dedicated.
Same here.
That's a dedicated
Like
subject.
so, like if you're going to be an assistant, this is what you want to do and what you don't want to do. I'm going to write that down.
You should write that down.
Okay, I'll write
You'll
that down.
remember.
I'll remember that.
Yeah. You talked about in the list here, no paid vacations.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like when my family's together, like we just were at Thanksgiving. They're talking And sooner or later, they'll talk about work, their works, and
Yeah.
their employees, and they'll talk about how much vacation they get.
Yeah.
And I always say, my boss is an asshole.
Yeah.
I get 0 paid vacation.
That's right.
And it's true because, my boss is very demanding. He makes me work long hours.
Right.
And like I take my paycheck and I hand it to my wife.
Yeah.
And as long as my MAC card's working, I'm fine. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing is you don't get paid vacation. I mean, if you're going to take a vacation, everybody says, "Oh, I want to work for myself. It's so great." And there's some ups to it. There's some definite ups to it, but there's some downs to it. And the downside is, you still have bills coming in. You want to take a 3-week vacation? That means the end of that pipe that you were shoving money into,
Yep.
there's nothing going into there for the 3 weeks
Right.
at least.
Right.
And when you're on vacation, you're like, the worst thing that can happen when you're on vacation is someone calls you up and they say, "Oh man, I have this big job for tomorrow. Are you available?" And it's like, "Oh shit, man. I'm at the beach, and it's like
right.
you miss a $5,000 gig or something." And that happens.
And then that's the family work balance too, which that's another topic. I
Yeah.
mean, because for me, like having 4 children, you had 4, and you balance those things, and you depending on what you're doing and the length of time, like you make those judgment calls. And I mean, that's life in general. You make judgment calls on things, but
Yeah, I remember back, thinking about that, Ziggy and Chewy. I used to do a ton of food photography with those guys, and they're food stylist, prop stylist. I would say Ziggy is.
Yeah.
But anyways, this is back when I was coaching soccer.
Yeah.
And I would sometimes ask them to come in at like 5 a.m. Can we start early so I can get out for soccer practice?
Sure.
And they would do it. They'd bitch and moan the whole time. But, it's like that's one of those life balance things that, if you can make it happen, you make it happen. If not, you got to make a decision. Well, do you want to work or do you want a soccer coach?
Right. Right.
But
you also had your daughter involved. It wasn't like you just wanted to be a coach. Like that was for her, So
Right.
like those are things that I look at. Like it's real important to me not to miss my kids' stuff. And that's something that I kind of promised Nikki.
sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to.
And she understands that. And it's nice that she does understand that, because there's just some times where I can't. But she knows my history and knows that 99% of the time I'm there, so, but yeah, that's big.
That actually happened to me this coming weekend. I had a job. Okay, my daughter, I mean, she's grown now, but she has this yearly oyster roast.
Okay.
And it's a big party where she has over 100 people. And it's on Saturday, right? So I figured, I can go down and I can get it because I have a job Monday. Okay. So I can make that work. And then all of a sudden I get a call from the client says, we need to set up on Friday. And then it's going to go over on Tuesday. So that weekend is all of a sudden no longer available,
Right.
because it's like 8-hour drive down, 8-hour
Right.
drive back. So it's like, I missed it. And,
Right.
it's like,
Well, and that's the unpredictable schedule, which is on the next on the list. And yeah, some things come up, the other unpredictable schedule is where they cancel on you the day of.
yeah.
And that just leaves you in you figure out, we always have things to do. There's always things to do, but that's the unpredictability of it. And that is the case in commercial photography, but that's the case on a lot of things. But you have to be ready for that. If you're jumping into this business, things change all the time. And, people get sick and that sort of thing. And I think since COVID, there's been more grace for people being sick than ever. But, I know just in some companies I worked with recently, like the amount of personnel change, that's something too, is when the people you work for leave the company and they go somewhere else, and hopefully they take you with them. That's a whole other thing. But and that brought us into stressful situations, which what you just said is a stressful situation, and it can be we can have moments on the job more stressful, or the job creates stress in your family life.
Right.
And those are those are two wildly different things. And you kind of just spoke on how you handle that on the family side. You make a decision, or you're like, you know what, I got to do this thing with my family, and then you kind of weigh the client, like, are they understanding client, or are they not?
Right.
And
Because a lot of people don't realize that it is really, really hard to get a new client.
Sure.
But it's easy to lose a client.
Well, sure.
And the last thing you want to do as a commercial photographer is give that client an opportunity to work with somebody else.
That's
because
right.
they might like them more than they like you.
Yep, it happens a lot.
It does.
I mean, there are times when, you lose a client because they have new management, and they say, you know what, we're hiring all new vendors. I mean, that happens, and that's the whole mindset of, it's not if, it's when you lose a client, because it happens, and it happens all the time.
It's attrition. You just got to count on that.
Yeah, and you can't take it personal. I mean, if you take all that stuff personal, you'll just be a down person. But the other thing, you're right. It's like if you let somebody go in to handle what you should have handled, it's a gamble.
Yep.
And you have to be okay with that happening.
Yeah.
It's tough to swallow. You know.
Well, that's one kind of stress. The other kind of stress is like the job. Like I love what I do, but everything, all of a sudden, something might happen. Like there's a piece of equipment that doesn't work,
Right.
or somebody drops something that shouldn't have dropped, or
Right.
somebody doesn't show up on time.
We've all had those.
There's a million things. Like a client decides that they need to get email okays, send the picture to the client, and the client's not available.
That's a whole thing.
And it'll drive you crazy. So there's a lot of that going on that creates stress too.
Well, there's a lot of deep breaths, I think, that have to be taken, and I mean, I have been in situations, and not to sound prima donna-ish, but like, I need 5 minutes,
Right.
and I'll walk away. And it's not because I'm upset. It's like, I've got so much jumbled stuff in my brain. I need a breath. I need to figure it out. And I come back better. And I didn't do that early on. I'd be frustrated, maybe, get out of the way. I'll do it, But I have learned to say, okay, listen, this isn't the end of the world. I need a minute to figure this out. And usually I come back with a better idea than if I just powered through and said, we got to do this now. And I think the clients have respected that, It showed that I cared enough about the project to say I need a minute, and I'd recommend that to people.
Yeah, that's a good way to handle stress.
Yeah, for sure. You had in here low prestige career. What did you mean by that?
To me, being a photographer isn't like being a lawyer or an engineer, or
Right.
to me, it's a low prestige career.
I see.
I mean, some people might look up to you, but I don't think most people put photographers on a pedestal thinking that they're, they might envy you if you're a success, but if like you're a norm photographer, I don't think they envy you. Whereas like, oh, you're a doctor, I'd love my kid to grow up to be a doctor. Now, if my kid said he was going to be a photographer, I'm not so sure I'd be liking that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I just kind of think that, you rub elbows with so many well-educated people, in this, CEOs and celebrities, and like, I have a 2-year education.
Right.
You know what I mean? 2-year.
But isn't it funny if you have the right personality? And I found myself in a situation.
You have that. You have that charisma. I don't.
But okay, so like I have been able to like carry on conversations with CEOs, and I've had a good time doing it.
Oh, I have too. But
Yeah.
like when I walk into a room though, and it's like the story I told the other day is, I was in this room with like 25 engineers, and I look around and I think to myself, I have the lowest IQ in this room. And it was like, but I'm the happiest probably.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think that, those all those people look over at me and have a high degree of respect.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by that.
You know, and I mean, we could go deep into this subject, but I'll just kind of give a quick one-liner. You know, I also think it's how you live your life. And if if you're good and kind to people, they respect that. You know, because I know a lot of brainiacs who are not very nice people.
Right.
I think that people respect when you're kind and good to them, and you know what I mean? Like they'll kind of rally around that with you, you know, especially nowadays, because people can be really nasty, you know? Right. So, you know, I know what you mean though, because for a long time I was very self-conscious. We're getting into personal stuff here, but I was very self-conscious about just my own education, where I came from, you know, the choices I made as a younger man, you know, like leaving high school and all those things. But now I'm totally okay. Like, I'm good in my skin. You know what I mean? So, like...
Yeah, I'm pretty good in my skin. And I can carry on a conversation with anybody pretty much, because I have so many different interests. Like, one of the first things I ask people is, like, what do you do for fun?
Right.
Then all of a sudden, our interests overlap more.
Right.
Because, you know, unless I'm a chess master. It's like, okay, you're on your own there.
Right, right.
I can't talk to you about that.
Yeah. But generally, you're right. You can find things in common. And that's great icebreaker stuff, you know. And I would almost encourage people to think about those situations and come up with things to say, you know, like where you're not tongue-tied, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And they want to see, you know, I think the other thing about commercial photography and clients, even models, working with models, is that you exude a level of confidence that they know they're going to get what they need, or you're confident in, like, a model that I'm going to help you through this and we're going to get out of you what we need. So don't worry about it. So it removes that self feeling about them, and the client feels confident they're going to walk out the door with what they need.
Yeah, well, that's very true, because when I was younger, I was, like, right now, if you stuck me with CEO of U.S. Steel or whatever, I could have a conversation and feel quite comfortable. But when I was 25 years old, I was petrified.
Right.
You know, I was not at ease, and it showed. I didn't have the confidence, and it showed. Now I do. I mean, I could, like, I don't know. I don't know what it is different. Like, they're my peers now.
Right.
We're the same age.
And you're still 29.
In my mind. That's another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we still relevant at 29? That's something that I feel all the time. Like, you know, there's so many young people.
Oh, that's a definite downside. As we get older, we end up losing clients, because you're working with, like, artists a lot of times. They're art directors, or they're graphic designers. They're artsy fartsy people, and they're, you know, a little bit crazy maybe, but you'll find that most people like to work with their contemporaries, their peers.
Right.
So as your peers get older and they start leaving the industry for, you know, retirement, or just going a different way, like, you find it harder to find clients, because you're not, you know, it's very seldom are you going to find some 21-year-old art director say, hey, let's work with this, you know, old 29-year-old.
Yeah. Right. But it affects you.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that's when like yesterday we were talking about, like, ruts. Am I in a rut? You know, like the stuff that's coming out now. Like, I'm gonna say something, and it's like, you know, I have kids who, my Lindsay's 21, Sam 18, and I see the pictures that they take, or the pictures they like, and I think they're horrible.
They have so much negative space over top of the head.
Yeah, it looks like bad travel photos. Yeah, you know, and it's funny. Like, I do this for a living. And I'll say, here, Lindsay, she wants some Instagram shot. She's like, no, let Sam do it. It's like, she doesn't want bokeh. You know, she doesn't want things out of focus. She doesn't want
good composition.
No, she doesn't want anything that's good. It's like, the more bad composition it is, the happier they are. I'm like, you know what? That's your world. I'm not even going to die on that hill anymore.
And your clients are on that hill.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that 21-year-old client.
That's why
it's
we're
like,
doing this. We're trying to get them back. You know?
That's funny.
Yeah, they're wrong. Yeah, but yeah. All right. So on your list here, and this is a nice list, by the way, that you put together. But should be a team player. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize, especially in commercial photography,
Yeah.
you're on your own, but you're not on your own. I mean, if you're a wedding photographer, you go in and you kind of know, everybody knows what's expected. You're trying to create pretty pictures, right? But as a commercial photographer, you might have to work with a stylist and a model, and there's going to be an art director telling you what to do, and you have to figure out how to do it. So
Right.
you can't be a real rugged individualist. You have
Sure.
to be a team player. And some people just aren't team players.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to have that personality trait.
Was that something that came naturally?
Yes.
Yeah, same
Yes.
here.
I'm a born, I always kid people. It's like, they ask me a question. It's like, hey, I'm a born follower. You've heard of the born leaders? I'm the other guy.
Okay.
So in that respect, but I mean, at the same time, I can take charge of a shoot. Like I know
And
what
you
I
have
want.
to.
Yeah, you
Right.
have to. But at the same time, I realize that as a commercial photographer, my job is not to make a pretty picture. My job is to make you happy. If you're the client,
Sure.
I'm making you happy.
Right.
And sometimes that gets me all messed up with doing headshots and stuff. Like I'll have people, they want to come in and do a headshot. Well, what kind of headshot? Because I don't want to disappoint you.
Right.
I want to give you exactly what you want. Just like if you were an art director or a graphic designer, like I don't want to go away, I think this is a really cool photo, but you think it's like dark and moody. Whereas I was wanting light and airy, so that's one of the things that you kind of have to know how to communicate those things, and you don't want to make
And sometimes they don't know how to communicate it.
they don't know what they want sometimes.
Right.
Well, sometimes they just found you online, they saw a couple of your pictures and they want something similar. And that's cool, because I actually have a website, a page on my website that is of, like, I call it dark and moody.
Yeah.
But it's a technique that I was playing with.
Okay.
Where it's a very small light source, so normally if the light source is coming like this is light over here, this is dark over here. But what I do is I create a gobo in the middle, so it goes dark, light, dark.
Okay.
And I mean, I did a whole series of photos on that, and I love that
I'm
look.
actually looking at one right now.
Yeah, I love that look.
Yeah.
But if you don't like that look,
Yeah.
or if that's, like some people, like headshots, model headshots are a really subjective thing. Like our studios are above the talent group,
Yep.
and they have a certain look that they like.
Yep.
And you better give it to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they don't like moody. They like smiles. And
Yeah.
I asked them one time, okay, why do you like smiles? I mean, I really like the intensity of it, because the client has to know they have nice teeth.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
they're
he said.
looking at physical.
Right. And I'm looking for mood or, you know.
Attitude, whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Right. And and that's the whole like subjective thing, like what is good, and the thing is, he's not wrong and you're not wrong.
Right.
Like it's good for people who are looking for that, or if you're creating a piece of art. I mean, that is kind of the beauty of what we do. We, in our heads, a lot of times we do have an end game of what we think it should be. And sometimes their end game is different. And this gets into the whole, and I know we've talked about this, where maybe you're struggling a little bit with visually, where are we going here? And they'll use like these terms.
That's a morning light discussion.
Right. But they'll use these terms, and you try to decipher what it means. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. And then they'll keep repeating it. And you're like, okay, I just got to say this. I don't know what you mean by that, and I think that honesty is good. Like there's that whole fake it till you make it thing. And yeah, okay. But getting to the root, like with an art director, getting to the root of what they mean, even though you might think
That's one of the hardest parts of this job.
yeah, is body language, reading what they're trying to say. We work with a art director, MM, And he used to come in with like acetate, and
Oh yeah.
and he would stick it on the back of the 4x5 camera, and literally it would work. Like he'd put the plate in and the fork, and and he was a guy who I love to death, and I know you do too. But he's a guy that he was really, he knew what he wanted, and that was really helpful. And some people, some people come in with pictures from Google, and they're like, make it look like this. That's cool. Sometimes that drives me crazy, but yeah, that happens too. But learning how to read what they want, and if you're not sure what they want, ask them.
Yeah, that reminds. I mean, every time you say something like that, it makes me think of this one particular situation. I did a lot of food photography over the years, and I tell you, I had probably 20 people use this term, morning light. I want it to be like morning light, and it's like I developed this theory about morning light. Your interpretation of morning light has to do with your position relative to the kitchen table, relative to the world. Like my chair faces west, okay? And there's a big door there. And to me, morning light is nice, soft light coming in. Just There's no direct light, no streaking of anything, just white light. But if you're facing the other direction, facing towards the sun, morning light to you was a sunbeam coming in. It's like that term just drove me crazy.
Yeah, and it's subjective. I mean, to the time of morning and the placement, and that's where you have to talk to them about, well, what does that mean to you? Well, I want it to be warm. I hear that a lot too. Can you make it warmer?
Right.
Well, do you want me to like take up the Kelvin? Like, what do you want me to like? And then they look at you like you're speaking a foreign language.
Even like the terms, I want it softer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that means one of two things. Do you want the shadows to be less crisp? Like, so that it was a bigger light source and the shadow isn't real defined? Or are you talking about you don't want the shadows very dark? I mean, those are two totally different things.
Well, sure. And you can interpret it as light, and they might think focus, like in the background. I mean, like that's soft to them. So like, yeah, I mean, it's conversations. And that was what we talked about yesterday, is problem solving. This is all part of problem solving. And it's not that what you're doing is a problem, but they have a different outcome. So you have to arrive together. And that's the best feeling in the world, when you arrive at the same place and everybody's celebrating what just happened. That's a great feeling as a commercial photographer, and that's the win that you're looking for.
Well, one of the really downsides to me is when, like, you're shooting, it's going well, and you're always asking, okay, are you liking what's going on? Because you want to go, you want to either refine it a little bit more.
Sure.
There's two bad things that happen. One is you're not done, and they're done. Okay, it's like, okay, let's move on. Okay, that's one bad thing, because it's like, I could make it so much better if you just give me another 10 minutes. The other thing is when they take you in the direction, you just think it's a bad decision. Okay, it's like, nah, let's move that prop over here, and it's like, oh man, it was looking so sweet, it was so balanced. I mean, I love it. No, let's move it over here. It's like, okay.
That's when you shoot it out of focus and it just doesn't work.
No, but I mean, that's a thing you have to put up with, and you're trying to make them happy, so that's what you do.
Well, and it's a give and take. And I think, like, when I come up against those things, I will shoot it, because all they want you to do is hit that button. It's my idea. Take the picture, and then try to sell them on the thing that you really like. And this isn't an ego thing, but generally, you were right. They just want to see it. And they just want to, sometimes they just want to say, this is my idea, and I want it to happen. A lot of times they don't go with that, but I've been there, and yeah.
Sometimes it's just, you're nowhere near it's a progression. So you're making that step, and you're not going to be able to go back, because you have to make another decision after that. And like all of a sudden that decision is forgotten, and it's like, but like I said, I can get over that.
Yeah. And like you said yesterday, it's a paycheck, and we want them to keep writing them.
Those paychecks are a really good idea.
They are a good idea. I don't know who came up with that. Which, comes to the next thing. So there's two things you have left on here. You have must be self-motivated and travel.
Yeah, I mean that's a downside to being a commercial photographer. And now, I'm just talking about myself and my journey. It's like you have to be able to get up. You don't have a job. You have to be able to do what you need to do to get the next job, or to, get those bills out, or like you have to get up. Like you can't be one of those people that get so distracted that you just go off and do whatever you want. And, if it's okay to do it occasionally, but if that's your norm, then you're never going to be successful, because what you do when you're not working is probably just as important as when you are shooting. Because if you're not shooting, you should be either marketing, doing R&D, maybe doing some new shoots, or at least trying to look at pretty pictures and see what you like about them. Just to get to be a better photographer.
Well, it's living in the world of what you do, and I'll be honest, I have even fallen into that trap, because life gets busy and you're doing things. And,
you got kids, and you like your guitars. I like my kayaks. There's always things that can pull you away,
distract you. That's a big one. I think you could really do a whole thing on that too. And then you have travel in here, and I know we talked about travel yesterday.
Travel being a good thing, but like you mentioned, sometimes it's not a good thing. Like I don't do a ton of travel, so it's not a big deal for me. But there are times when I remember when I was doing a lot of traveling, it was like I didn't really like it, but I like the paychecks again, and it's like. Yeah, you have to be willing to do that. So you have to be flexible enough.
Yeah. So, the subject of this talk was the downside of commercial photography, but I think we should land a plane. Like, there are downsides, but there are incredible upsides. And if you have an interest in commercial photography, if you have a love and passion for photography, like, just go for it. And just navigate the downside. Just navigate it, and do it with a mindset of, I really love this. This feels like a downside, but there are bigger downsides of life, and work and things. And like, I always want to stay positive about it, because, like you said, and I agree with you. Like, this is, to me, the best career. It is.
I love it, but I don't know if I quite agree with you. I mean, if you look at all these things and you think to yourself, I don't want to put up with that crap.
Well, true.
Then don't waste your time.
Well, I get that. Yeah. And that's the whole passion thing. Like, I don't put money before passion. It just won't work. Like I didn't get into photography because I thought I'd be a rich man. Like I just thought, okay, I think I can do this. And then the rest just kind of came,
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people, like we were talking about the rate of attrition from our classmates. It's like, I know of very few people that are successful at this.
Yeah.
And part of me worries about the future of this career too, with ChatGPT, AI in general. But right now, it's still wonderful. It's still wonderful, and I hope it stays that way.
Okay, let's touch on the ChatGPT thing, because we have talked about that recently.
Let's do a separate one on it.
You want to do a separate one?
Yeah, because it's, I don't want to be too much of a Debbie Downer.
Well, and you know what? Yeah, I think you're right.
But I mean, you were right when you said I think it's the greatest career possible. I mean, I loved it to death. I'm so happy with it. I would not want to do anything else, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And if you found this video before you saw the other one, you need to go back and listen to the one about how good this can be.
Yeah. And it can be very good.
It can be awesome.
All right. You want to wrap that there?
Yep.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed all of this, and this was a lot of fun, and we'll see you on the next one.